this is Kerry Meath-Sinkin. Welcome to Yoga Illumined Ayurveda. Today we're going to be talking about how to make ghee, otherwise known as clarified butter. Ghee is considered to be an extremely nourishing and medicinal substance in Ayurveda. It can help us with absorption, assimilation, can help us lubricate the tissues, and even mildly increase our digestive fire. It's excellent to bring in a sense of ojas and deep nourishment to the system. It's good for helping ground those pitta and vata body types, but of course, like all oils, can be aggravating when there's too much kapha in the system. Some people have the notion that it's hard to make ghee, but it's actually really easy with a few simple ingredients. What's the first and most obvious thing we need? Of course we need butter, unsalted and preferably organic. What's another thing we need? Cheesecloth. This is important because it is what allows us to separate the milk solids from the ghee, which is really important if we want to keep it shelf stable over a long period of time and get the most medicinal qualities from it. We also need a substance to store it in. We really like glass canning jars because they're cheap, they're easy, and we don't have to worry about any leaching chemicals. Of course, we need a scissors, because that's going to be what allows us to cut the cheesecloth when it's time. And I personally really like having something to pour the ghee into before we pour it into the jar, because sometimes it can get a little bit messy and spill into different places if we don't do that, as well as using a strainer to help us put the cheesecloth into, which we'll be going through in detail. So let's get started. Okay, so let's take the butter out of the package and allow it to start melting. You want to start out either with your pan on at no temperature or just on a very low temperature while you're putting it in. This is the fun part. Sometimes a little bit messy, but you can always wash your hands afterwards. This is also when my son likes to try to steal the butter from me to taste it. Okay, so now I'm going to turn the temperature on to low. And you're going to see that we really do need to vary the temperature based on your stove, based on whether you have electric, gas, or an induction like we do. We'll allow it to get melted and then we'll show you how to adjust that temperature as we go. So the butter is still melting here. We notice there's still some little sticks that you can see. At this point you can keep it on a slightly higher temperature, and we'll show you that just in a minute you need to pull the temperature back so we can allow it to just simmer for a long period of time. Okay, so here you can see that it's boiling too strongly. I want to turn it up just to show you what's too much. The bubbles are really, really deep, and it's starting to get a little more active than we would want it to when we're making ghee. Okay, so this is still just a touch low. We could turn it up about half on an electric stove so it has a little bit more of a simmer, but not too much where it's going to burn. Alright, so you can see here that we have some more active bubbles, but they're not too big to the point where we might want to turn it down. So this is the high side of good, but this is still, according to my husband, primo. So this is a perfect simmer. You see that it's simmering a little bit, the bubbles are going actively, but you don't have anything too strong to worry about burning. Okay, this is the perfect temperature to turn it back to a really, really low simmer. For us, that's about a 2 on an induction stove. And at this point, I usually set the timer for about 30 minutes so that I don't forget about it and allow it to burn. Alright, now we're at a critical point with the ghee. We see the milk solids have started to separate, and soon they're going to slowly start to drop to the bottom of the pan and form an even more solid substance on the top. We don't want to stop it yet. So now the ghee is starting to smell like a beautiful buttered popcorn. And you can see there's dark solids on the bottom and only a few still on the top. This is a perfect time to turn your ghee off and let it sit for a few minutes before we strain it. Now you can see that the milk solids have started to separate a little bit. They're getting a little bit of a brown color on top, and some of them are going to start to drop to the bottom of the pan. Some of them will stay on the top of the pan, but you want to allow that movement to happen. When that movement stops, that's when we know the ghee is done. I would say at this point we probably have another 5-ish minutes. Okay, so at this point you see the bottom's pretty brown, so it might look too brown to you, but when we pick it up, we actually see that it's a beautiful golden yellow. So at this point, according to my teacher, Dr. Vasant Lad, We actually want to gently skim off just the very top because there's actually some medicinal qualities in that you can go ahead and put on rice. And then the bottom pieces will actually skim off through our cheesecloth in just a minute. So we'll see they're a little chunky just on the top, and that's what we want. The little foamy part, it's actually really delicious, very rich but delicious in moderation. Okay, so now you can really see that most of the top is pretty clear, and now it's time to strain it. At this point, we're almost done. We have our ghee that's already cooled for about 15 minutes, and I have all of my tools here to finish up. What I need to do first is cut the cheesecloth. I don't need to have it too big because I'm going to just put it through the strainer or onto the ball jar. An easy dividing line is just where the cheesecloth folds. So now that I have that done, I have two choices. I can either put the cheesecloth directly into the strainer, which I'll then put over the measuring cup, or, this is my favorite part, because it saves me a step, I can actually put the cheesecloth right over the ball jar, just make a little bit of an indent, and at this point, the reason I use the measuring cup is because it's a little bit hard to pour directly from the pot. You can see a lot of the pieces are still on the back, which is exactly what you want. Now I'm going to go ahead and pour it in. You'll also notice that today I used a pretty thick bottom pot, which is really important because really thin ones tend to burn really easily and make the job a lot more difficult. You also see again that you have some of the pieces in the bottom of the cup, and those won't come through the cheesecloth, and those are the ones we don't want to eat. Those are milk solids that we just want to go ahead and throw in the trash. So now I'm actually going to keep my cheesecloth because this is a perfect aid to help clean out the bottom of the pan. So there you have it. Beautiful ghee, all ready to go. I hope you enjoy. Thanks.